Hey there. If you're listening to this, you're about to listen to an interview I conducted with Ali Salman. I brought Ali on because I had some questions. Questions about current legal proceedings going on between the Concordia Student Union, the CSU, and Concordia proper. On January 29th, the CSU hosted an SGM. That's a special general meeting in which they wanted to pass a resolution. There was a motion, rather, to pass a resolution on BDS, that's boycott, divest, sanction, a Palestinian led movement that seeks to boycott, divest, and sanction certain Israeli companies and corporations, organizations, individuals even that have profited off the war in Gaza. The motion passed. There was a record turnout, but it seems like things don't didn't go quite the way Concordia wanted. On February 6th, not too long after the SGM, Concordia launched an investigation into the STM as well as the Concordia Student Union. They're alleging that things were sort of done in an unsafe way, dangerous even. The initial letter that talks about the start of this investigation mentions heavily masked individuals. It talks about unauthorized use of the mezzanine space where they had to bring people because of it was at an overcapacity in the main hall building, class auditorium rather. So seems like there's a lot of narratives about what's going on right now, and I brought Ali on to talk with because he was there at the SGM, and I've had him before to talk about student politics, the repression, and even perhaps infringement on freedom of speech that some are alleging Concordia of because of this investigation. I thought this interview was really enlightening. One part in particular, Ali talks about how this SGM compares to one from the historic student strikes that was held at Concordia, and there's quite an interesting difference. But I'll let you listen to the episode and you hear that for yourself. Hi there. How are you doing today, Ali?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. The weather's gotten a little cold, but the sun is out every day. A little
Unfortunately.
more sunlight. It feels good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Ali, the reason I'm interviewing you is there's quite a bit of hubbub happening around the CSU, the Concordia Student Union. I guess the latest development is that Concordia University allowed the student union to continue on with their booking privileges in preparation for the upcoming CSU elections. But for people out of the loop, this story sort of, I think, goes back to the SGM on the 28th. Is that right?
Yeah, it does. It does go back to that.
Yeah, the SGM. Oh, I'm sorry, on the
It
29th.
was it was the 29th, yeah.
Before we get into it, Ali, could you introduce yourself to the viewers, the listeners?
Yes, my name is Ali Salman. I am a counselor on the CSU council, and I am also a alternate governor on the board of governors. I'm one of the two student representatives for the CSU on the board.
This must be a busy time for you.
Yeah, it was quite a busy time.
Ali, I guess take us back to this inciting incident. What was this SGM about? What was happening?
So the SGM was called to because of a petition that went out to call for the CSU and the Board of Governors. Actually, it was called the CSU first to adopt BDS, to adopt a stance on BDS, and then to mandate the CSU to bring it to the Board of Governors. And the petition got, I think, the 200, not I think, it actually got the 250 signatures required, and then the SGM was called on the 29th. Um, and the 29th was quite historic because we like the SGM hit quorum, hit double quorum actually. It
Oh
hit
wow.
1,000 people on on its peak, and the last time an SGM was called in CSU was in 2012. And from what I know, uh, don't quote me on that, but from what I know, it was called for the strikes that were happening in 2012, and it did not even hit quorum. So it was quite historic to see that 1,000 people showed up in person to vote on BDS, and then the vote was actually passed by a 93% majority, which equates to 885 for and 58 against. Um, and that was basically the SGM and what happened on that day. It was a very very historic day for Concordia student body and for Concordia in general. It's I think it's a day that will be remembered for as long as Concordia exists.
Wow, wow, that's quite incredible. That because I always think of the student strikes back in 2012, the Maple Spring, this huge moment of protest in Montreal's history. I always think about it as probably the most activated the city has been on a large scale, and it's really interesting to me that even then, during that kind of um, uproar, that kind of hubbub, that they could not reach quorum, or they maybe had difficulty reaching quorum, and then this time around, the second SGM that's happened in the last like 15 years, you guys are able to get double the amount of people.
Yeah,
That's
it is. It's ironic because I think most of the people most people were scared not to hit the quorum.
right. No, of course. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's kind of to be expected, right? It's like this was in January. I feel like some people have questions over the kind of momentum that can still be maintained by the movement, but clearly it's loud and strong. There's
Hmm.
a strong presence in the student body, a strong call towards BDS. It's really incredible to
I
see.
th I th
And so you were there at the SGM then.
Yes, I was.
Can you tell me about what the vibe was like? Because I know I say vibe, of course, it's maybe not journalistic, but I see Concordia University claiming that things were sort of unsafe and that there's some kind of breaches of policy, perhaps. But I'm kind of curious what you were seeing on the floor there.
It was probably the um one of the most impressively organized things. It's impressive to organize so well with 1,000 people in person,
Hmm.
while you didn't expect, I think, 1,000 people to come. It was very well organized. People were checked for their IDs when they went in during the vote. Also, people who went out during the vote couldn't go back in when the
Mm.
question was called. It was done according to the rules of the Roberts rules, and it was throughout the whole meeting. It was very very well chaired, very well organized, and this unsafe environment that Concordia talks about. It's I mean, I think people have repeated it over and over, and Concordia fails to understand because it's ironic because the motion itself calls for Concordia to disclose, divest, defend, declare, over the CSU
Hmm.
to do it and then get it to Concordia. And the defend part actually goes to um, the part where Concordia is tasked with protecting its own students, and by protecting its own students, we mean that some of these students hide their faces because a lot of other students take videos of them voting and exercising their rightful student democracy for them to
Hmm.
eventually post them and dox them, maybe on Twitter, maybe on Instagram, maybe on other platforms. And it's funny because Concordia talks about this threatening environment with masked people, but these people have explained over and over why they're masked and why they put masks on. I mean, it's COVID masks anyway, so what's the problem with that to begin with? I think they have
Hmm.
the right to do that. Um, but then they also have the right to protect themselves from doxing, which Concordia fails to take on as a university who owes this protection to their students, and
Hmm.
it allows it to happen over and over. And students feel like, you know what, I'm gonna put a mask on to probably protect myself and protect my face from being doxed on Twitter. And it's not to say that there are a lot of people, not a lot of people actually, quite the minority say that they do that because, you know, if they were doing something right, they wouldn't hide their faces. But um, that's such a plain, brainless argument because
Mm.
it's just like you're saying this, but you know very well. what the consequences is are for someone who puts their faces out and is being very, you know, um, loud about justice in this case.
Well, it sounds sort of one-sided then, I guess. It seems to me, at least in this kind of
Hmm.
talks about safety. So afterwards, after that SGM, I believe on February, what was it, 6th, Concordia started an investigation.
Yeah,
Yeah, can
it
you?
was. It was. Yeah. So it was basically, I think Concordia saw this huge number of people and this vote that basically broke. Um, it was quite a historic vote. It was a it was a sweeping majority,
Mhm,
and Concordia, to delegitimize that vote and delegitimize the student democracy, since they know that there is no real power in their hands to actually shut down that vote in itself, then they'll just go ahead with shutting down and having this to take on this battle with their student union and trying to delegitimize their vote. It was, it was, I don't know what's the real word to describe this, but it was like they showed this desperation where they're like,
mm,
they know that this was pure student democracy and pure something that is historic that happened on their campus that
right.
goes against they always speak about this foundation of Western universities and how they were founded on American free on sorry on academic freedom, but there's also a foundation of these Western universities that is the misalignment of these universities when it comes to oppressed people of the world. We saw it. We
Mm,
saw it in 1969 with the black students. We saw it in South Africa. We saw it in Vietnam. We saw it in many historical instances where even Concordia itself had these very bad stances on these historical events and towards the oppressed people that they today it kind of stains their name, and it will
mm.
continue to stain their name uh, regarding Palestine in the future if they don't take action immediately in cutting ties with a colonial entity that continues to ethnic cleanse the Palestinians and exercise their genocide on the Palestinian people.
Right. So you see a lot of this kind of, I guess, historical repetition with Concordia as a sort of Western institution representing these kinds of larger forces above it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's even more vital that this kind of student. It's kind of interesting that there's this. To interrupt my own thought, I think it's interesting that there's this kind of conflicting force between the university and the sort of values it uh, says it has, and the fact that student democracy is one that is kind of seems to be historically clashing with very often, right? I think
Yeah.
it's interesting that there's a sort of misalignment between those two.
It is. It's quite interesting, and it's quite interesting that they repeat this misalignment.
Right, right, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's this
Mhm.
constant thing that needs to be, I guess, struggled with. Um, well, from today, so the investigation started just short of a month ago. The SGM was in end of January, I guess. Where do things stand now? Where do you expect things to head after this?
I hope that this vote will be, or the BDS at least, will be taken up in the Board of Governors as soon as possible. I think one thing that people don't really understand is that the Board of Governors is actually tailored in such a complicated way that sometimes actually works against the student democracy in nature or student
Mm,
bureaucracy in this case in nature. So it is quite complicated to get things going on that board. Uh, but nevertheless, that doesn't mean that it's not gonna happen. It is gonna happen. At the end of the day, it is a mandate from the students towards the CSU. So one way or not or another, it's gonna be put on there. And I hope that it's gonna be done as soon as possible to satisfy these student demands and to to have this mandate satisfied in regards to the CSU.
incredible. Any last words, parting words, Ali?
I think I've said I've said more than enough. I didn't expect to go this deep into some of the analysis, but it was something that needed to be said
Yeah, no,
because Concordia keeps delegitimizing these votes. And I think one last thing I want to say, because one of the things that was emphasized on that investigation, or in the even in the statement by Graham Carr on I think it was the next day or the 2 days afterwards, where he said that it does not represent 40, it's 36,000 students. Um, on top of the fact that it was a historic vote that met double quorum, I think that there is other stuff that are happening around the student body in the faculties, that show that it's a majority demand in the student body, including BDS being passed in the arts and science and the fine arts faculties, and it's very popular among departments in the university. So I just want to say that this student democracy is not limited to the CSU,
mm,
and that BDS in itself is not limited to the CSU, and we're still seeing, even after the ceasefire, thousands of people mobilize and thousands of people um, come out in support of BDS, and it's no coincidence that it's still a very big subject on campuses in North America in general.
no, clearly, I think a double quorum is quite representative of that. Thank you very much, Ali, for coming on and informing
You're
us
welcome.
about the current investigation, the background, and the need to struggle with these universities to keep student
Of
democracy
course.
alive.
You're welcome.